Hello, friends. I'm Wendy Joe, and this is the Grow Podcast. I'd like to introduce you to my co host, Ashley. How are you doing today, Ashley?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing all right, hanging in there, thinking about that little girl inside of me. Today, we're talking about the inner child, and
Ooh.
I love the topic, but it's deep, isn't it?
It's heavy. It's a heavy topic.
hmm I think a lot of people may not even really be aware that they have an inner child that is still kind of with them. Um, what is your experience? When did you realize that you had an inner child, and what was that experience like?
I am not, I don't have a clear idea of when. I don't have a specific experience to speak of. I feel like she's always been with me. I think I never let her go. Now that I'm thinking about it,
Mhm.
I'm that person. I was a full grown adult, still feeling like I was the child.
Ah, okay. And that's important for people to understand. I think a lot of people feel that way, so it's important for people to understand. And really, the inner child is kind of who you were kind of before puberty, usually.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of you is really childlike.
Yeah.
And a lot of people grow up in age, but don't really grow up emotionally
Mhm.
because they haven't healed that part of themselves.
My emotional body has always been very mature. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the world told that emotional body to kind of stay closed in.
Mm-hmm.
But my physical body, to your point, it was growing, but I still felt like I was a child physically, but my emotional maturity grew really quickly. You see what I'm saying?
I
And,
do.
and
Mm-hmm.
so I kind of struggled a lot with this very mature emotional state that a lot of people didn't understand and resonate with. And even when you were telling your story earlier before we were started recording about how a friend of yours was like, you're making things too complicated. And it's not necessarily a complication, but it's a very detailed emotional experience that I was very clear on. And as I grew older, I felt like the adult version of me didn't have time to explore that anymore. So I kind of put it away.
I understand. Yeah, so it's different. The experience is different for everyone, really.
Mhm.
And I think perhaps what you're saying is that you were a very mature child, which I
Mhm.
can relate to, right? I think I was sort of expected to be more like a grown up and asked questions that were more grown up when I was, 5, right?
Right.
So I was mature, but the emotional underlying for me anyway, the emotional part underneath was not really mature. So, I would look at the world as a child in many ways, even
Mhm.
though I felt pretty mature and could handle a lot of things.
Mhm.
And that made relationships suffer,
Yeah.
particularly. I could do really well in school and on a job and take on the world, but put me in a relationship or a deep friendship, and I was lost. And I
Yeah.
didn't even really know it,
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. And because most of your relationship is that emotional connection that you have with other people. And so if that aspect isn't necessarily, evolved enough, then it is hard to connect. But I kind of found in my experience, I kind of found it that my expectations of people's emotional maturity never really matched. And it always required me to be the person to help evolve other people emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's always been the role that I've played because of where I sit in my emotional capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember one of the first times I realized that I was actually an adult doing adult like things. And it was when I had went to my corporate job, and so we sat in these big meetings, and everybody just kind of, you know, made face and, you know, talked about numbers and such. And I looked around and I was like, oh, is this what adults do? So everything I
Right.
had done before that didn't feel like adult like behavior, adult like work. You know, to me, I just was moving through the world and doing my own thing.
Mhm.
But it wasn't until I had this very rigid structure around me. We meet at this time. You present this exactly this way. You know, get these numbers that way. That I looked around and I said, "Oh," and it was a very like rough and rigid shift
Mm-hmm.
in the way that I was experiencing my body.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like an epiphany of, who am I? What is this supposed to feel like?
Mhm.
Is this adult? Is this child? I think until you really heal that part of you, it can be really difficult in many situations to even understand, where you fit in, right?
Yeah.
And many people don't realize that that's kind of the issue. I think, the inner child also can be that playful part of us too. It's not all, I mean, I think the inner child can hold a lot of memories that we aren't aware of, and it can be difficult, but there's also that playful side of it
Yeah.
where, that little girl or little boy inside of you is wanting you to be more playful. So that can be a positive side too.
Oh yes. And you know what? If I could have, like, if I could recreate the world in my own eyes, I would want more people to explore that aspect of their inner child. Like, I just feel like people are so serious all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like no space for joy and laughter and like just a smile or doing something that makes you uncomfortable. Like, as children, everything is new. And then as soon as you turn into adults, we all like, oh, we can't do nothing new because it makes me nervous,
Right.
you know? And it's
Right.
like, really?
Right. Well, you were telling me that you love to do improv, and I wonder if that's a way you can kind of still let her out, let out that playful side.
Yeah, that's what that turned into. So I chose to do that because I wanted to be more comfortable on stage. So I struggle with using my voice, communicating clearly without feeling nervous, anxious, anxiety, things like that. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to do something I've never done before. And I found improv, and I thought I was going to do it once. And when I say that I laughed, the most like abundant laugh, like it felt like it moved in and through me. I was like, whoa, I have not laughed like this since I was a little girl.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And that's so important to health and well-being. Just in so many ways, it can be healing.
Yeah. And it definitely has been. So, what has your experience been like with your inner child?
Well, I think so. I was not aware of her really until I started to go through a spiritual transformation around the age of 30.
Mhm.
And in my first few sessions with a healer, they suggested that I needed to connect with my inner child to open up the past.
Mm,
I knew that I needed to heal some things from my past, but the puzzle pieces had been scattered long before of what happened to me, what was really going on when I was young. Um, and it was suggested that if I connected with her, she could start to tell me about it. And so we did a meditation that really opened me up. And when I saw her, I just really wept for a long time.
yeah.
Um, it was a deep experience, and but one I wouldn't trade for the world. I'm really happy that I started on that journey
Mhm.
and let her know that she was loved for
Yeah.
herself, because the more that I did that, when I would come out of these meditations, I would recover some memories that I needed to look at. but also I could feel that I was starting to create some peace within myself.
Yes.
And so over the years, I kind of intuitively feel like I know when I need to do that again, because healing is a journey.
Yeah.
And even though I did a lot of work at that time, connected a lot with her, journaled about what she would tell me, um, there was still more to look at. There always is more. I
There's
mean,
always more.
there's always more. But for me, she really held the key to opening up the past. And also for me to start really looking at life from an adult perspective,
Mm.
especially in heavily emotional situations, relationships. Like I said earlier, I can, you know, work like nobody's business. Did
Yeah.
really well in school. Was like very driven, right? But put me in a marriage or a relationship, and I'm like a little girl. you
Yeah.
know, I don't think that's true anymore. I don't know. My wife may have a different story, but I was still looking at these relationships like that hurt little girl, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
and wanting to fulfill these needs really that she had.
Yeah.
So that's another reason it's really important to take a look, and see, you know, who you really are. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the first version of you is really who you are. And I think that's a good point. She comes when she feel like it, and especially in stressful situations.
mhm.
It's like, you do the healing work and you feel like, you kind of got it under control, or like now you're self-aware, but as soon as you hit those really stressful spaces, all of a sudden you're like that little girl again. It's like, where did you come from? I thought I
Right.
was done with you. Like, just over there.
Mhm. I feel that. Uh,
Yeah.
on that
Oh,
note, we'll be
okay.
right back.
Okay.
Hey there, friends. Wendy Joe from the Grow podcast. Welcome back to our channel where we discuss various topics related to spirituality, personal growth, and development. Today, we're going to talk about healing your inner child. Healing your inner child is a process that can help you work through the pain and trauma you may have experienced during your childhood. It involves acknowledging and validating your emotions and finding ways to cope and heal from those experiences. Once you start this process, you can write a letter to your younger self, expressing compassion and empathy for what you went through. If you want to let it go, you can take that letter and burn it. Watch it burn till the end. Remember, healing your inner child is a journey. It takes time and patience. But by doing so, you can experience increased self-awareness, improved relationships, and a greater sense of inner peace and happiness. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel below. And we're back.
So, Wendy, I was thinking, what are some ways that you heal your inner child?
So I think there are sort of steps and layers to it. For me, my inner child, doesn't has to kind of be called in, and I do that through a very really simple meditation. I'll explain it because it's so simple. Seriously,
I would
so
love to hear.
yeah, if you do any guided meditation, it's basically a simple guided meditation where you visualize yourself walking outside on a nice, lovely day, and you walk down to the edge of a pond, sit on a bench, and you notice a footbridge.
Mhm.
And as you look at the footbridge, you see there's a little girl or a little boy standing on the bridge. So I see my inner child, my little girl, standing on the bridge. And then I visualize myself walking over, and she comes over to me, and we join hands and go and sit on the bench together.
Mm.
And then I kind of ask her if she's got something to tell me. Sometimes no. Sometimes we just sit, and then other times there's this, she starts telling me different things. And then I kind of sense when it's time for her to go, And we walk back to the bridge, and I watch her walk across and disappear across the bridge. And then I turn and walk back to the beginning. So it's really simple.
Hmm.
But there's something about that footbridge and just I can see right now, the pond with the sun kind of dancing on it, that feels comfortable and just kind of invites her in. And so I'll do those connections. Sometimes it's painful things that she has to tell me, and I think it's something that one can do by themselves. Sometimes you might want to have a healer help you, but really, if you're ready, you can mostly do that yourself, where you're making that connection, accept those painful things that she's telling you, and start to heal the emotional trauma through this connection. And that's kind of how I have done it. I've also had to really learn self compassion, as I listen to her and look at these situations from an adult point of view, because that's really key.
Yeah.
A lot of times you may even be aware of some of the things that you're intuitively learning from your child, but you haven't really looked at it from an adult point of view. You're still in that, childish way about it because you haven't been able to accept what happened. Um, so that's really how I make the connection and work with the information. I When I was first doing this, I definitely journaled what she told me. I also chose to then burn those pages of the journal. I didn't want anyone else to find it, and I wanted to let it go. I wanted to watch it burn, and sort of, in many ways, that was like, gave it some sort of finality. Oh yes, this happened, it was painful, this is what I think about it. I realized that I was an innocent child that couldn't have done anything about it.
Mhm.
And now I'm going to let it go.
Yeah, I think that is beautiful. Um, like the whole walk through the journey of it was beautiful to me. Um, I feel like just in hearing the few episodes that we've done that you're more in tune visually is what it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's really dope.
Yeah.
Um,
It's important to kind of figure that out too.
yeah,
I'm definitely a visual person, um, in so many ways, whether it's working as an occupational therapist and visualizing how the body works, or as an artist, it's definitely, for me, it's visual. What about you?
um, I am very much in self-discovery phase right now, but I'm finding that it's more intuitive, more about the emotional and just the emotional connection that I have. And so a lot of the spiritual work that I've done, while I still do like meditation, I still will use cards and things like that. Like those just help to enhance the experience. But most of the time, the consistent thing that feels good to me most of the time is through that emotional connection. So
Nice.
allowing the emotions that were once felt, like I can't even really visualize my childlike self
Hmm.
on my own. Like if I were to do
Right.
that meditation, there would be no face or anything. It'll probably just be an entity. Um, and
Uh-huh.
so a lot of times she comes, and that's why I think we said it earlier. Um, she just kind of comes when she feels like it because usually it's tied to an emotion that I have at a given time.
Oh, that
And
makes perfect sense. So you're
mhm,
feeling something and she appears.
yeah, it takes
I
me
love
back
that. Mhm.
time or sometimes it's tokens, so like things that I might have like had in my hand or experienced at a certain time, and I've actually strategically placed certain tokens in my experience, in my life experience, where if I see certain things they mean certain things to me. And so and then there are other things that I didn't do intentionally, and so when I run across those tokens, then I automatically get introduced to her and she
Mm.
shows up.
I love that. And we'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur and a nurse, but I stay be having to work on that inner child. They call it inner child work. The problem is if you don't keep up with her, she'll sneak up on you in ways that can totally change your life. And the crazy thing is, she finds new ways to show up in my life. So I'm constantly on a journey to find healing. Healing my inner child was not easy, but I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, so I had to do it. And the first step to healing your inner child is just acknowledge that she's there. Give her permission to feel her old wounds. Stop trying to hide from the emotions that lay dormant, and create space to dialogue, whether it's through written word. Obviously, my inner child is a she, and it is our goal to bring back the joy of childhood. So how do you heal your inner child?
Have you heard of the Cannabis Nursing School? It's a place where cannabis nursing, entrepreneurship, and spirituality meet. The Highline Tribe is waiting for you, and it's so easy to find. CannabisNursingSchool.com.
Hey there, friends. If you're an intuitive like me, you have thoughts and feelings about your own health and sometimes the health of others. What you're dealing with is medical intuition, but you probably don't know how to harness it. Hey, I met this wonderful woman named Gina, and she's doing a training on medical intuition with her company, The Heal World. Let's face it, there's lots of people getting sicker and sicker, and they often don't find answers with mainstream medicine. We have lots of technology, but we're missing the key, medical intuition. If you'd like to learn more, you could email her at gina@blisslife.com or give her a call at 352-888-2100. The Heal World. And we're back. Well, it's really cool to me to hear a different way to approach inner child work. And I think, a lot of times people feel afraid that they're doing things wrong or that there's only one way to do it. But we just displayed the two different ways, two different approaches, because that's what works for our own healing. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I am a firm believer in being able to recognize what feels good, right? So, like, a lot of times spiritualists will kind of come from the perspective of, like, I'm going to teach you how to do something. And it's almost feels as the receiver that you have to do it this way in order to get the result. Mm-hmm. And as a person who tried all the different ways that were taught to me, a lot of the time, and I might just be a weird person, like maybe I'm like of the 1% or something, but like a lot of the time I have found that most of the time, while I could do it and it just wasn't, it didn't fit into my experience. And so based on some of my personal experiences that I have learned that anything that faces resistance that doesn't come easy or natural to me or doesn't feel good to work at, most likely is something that, is good to know, but like, let's set it on the shelf here. And that's kind of how I approach different things. And I think that there's a lot of, you have to have a lot of integrity for yourself, I guess, confidence in yourself to feel like it's okay to put things on the shelf when people are telling you this is how you're supposed to do it. And
well, don't you think also, so many people, most people probably grow up in some type of organized religion, right? Where everything is laid out and you're told how to do it. People go to, religious school classes to learn the correct prayers, the correct way to celebrate certain holidays, etc. So when they enter spirituality as a spiritualist, or even if they're just sticking their toe in, they're looking for guidance. They're looking for that same structure. And I think many spiritualists try to create that structure too, even though they've many times rejected organized religion. They do the same thing.
They do. And we built some sort of, like, if they're good at it, build some sort of cult like following, just saying. But, and I don't think there's anything wrong with some structure, but I just I think we talked about it a little bit in a previous episode, but I just feel like there's space for, highlighting individuality. Like, not everybody's good at everything. Like, I go to school, you go to school, I might be good at math, you might be good at English, right? And so while I still got to do all the stuff, I don't have a choice. I have to still learn English so I can talk and write and speak. But why not give me extra work in math because I do it faster, right? And so, like, why can't we approach like evolution in a way that's a little bit more individualized, even though I know why, because it's easier to kind of blanket everything. But,
Right.
at the end of the day, like, I think we're in a very globalized space where you have access to any and all information. And so everybody should be able to have access to something that resonates highly with them and help
Yes.
them to become the most evolved version of themselves.
Right. And I think, you can take in information. I mean, we're, you know, talking about our experiences and giving information today about the inner child. Take that, and maybe you need a little guidance at the beginning, but then really follow your own way, your own intuition. And I'm not saying that you may not benefit from, some sort of coach or counselor or spiritual healer. It likely could really help, um, but I think ultimately you still have to live with yourself. So why not find your own way with it once you have a little more information?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the benefit of having external support, I think we kind of overutilize external support, but the benefit of it is alternative perspective,
Right.
right? Like, so sometimes when emotions and feelings and thoughts and all those things live inside of you and they never come outside of you, and especially when we talk about the inner child, we have a very unique ability to distort the reality.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so to have somebody say, hey, you know what, that sounds a bit distorted, this is how I perceive it, it puts you on the outside of you so you can now see it with your own eyes. And so,
Right. Yes, that's very, very true. So I think, really um, acknowledging your inner child, trying to make some kind of connection, or saying to yourself, in your case, she just shows up, right? So it could be that could be happening to someone and they don't realize what it is, so I think that if you get anything out of this episode today, it's, stay aware and open to the idea that the younger version of you may still need some healing work or may have something to tell you, and start to figure out how you can make that connection.
absolutely, I agree with that. And I think if you can get over the hurdle of connecting with her, like, that's most of the work.
Right, for sure. Well, I hope everyone has a great week and enjoy your inner child.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.